So for my last semester at Suffolk University, I decided to pursue an independent study. I've been writing music for about 7 years under the name Haelphon now. I'm a music producer, singer, songwriter. I do primarily electronic music and pop music. Started when I was about 11. Never really took it seriously, and then when I entered college, I started to hit more of a professional sound. And then a couple of years later, I started getting involved in licensing opportunities, sort of commercial, TV shows, promotional videos, movies, things along those lines. And it proved to be a more or less a feasible business opportunity, especially for me who never really planned on pursuing my music career as something professional. It was always just kind of a hobby. But the opportunities grew, and eventually I want to start exploring more on the artist side and get more into performing. And so this independent study was kind of a way to formulate how to best do that. So we're going to be talking about a couple things throughout this. We're going to talk about things I learned for trademarking, which is important for artists that are growing. Things like filing the company are important too, as well as various sort of marketing things that I've learned. Also did a lot of talking about the managerial contracts because I'm looking to bring in an outside manager who's a friend of mine. So we have to develop a managerial contract too. So we talked about how to best do that, sort of the norms of the industry, what's it look like in California, and the progress from there. So I was fortunately assisted by Suffolk University's law clinic. That was nice. We spent a lot of time working on the specific legal matters. So between the trademark, the company filings, and the managerial contract, we got a lot of progress done. So I have the groundwork laid up for what's coming next. So first off, trademarks. After getting to know my professors, they brought to my attention that if I was really looking to pursue this, I needed some sort of protections in terms of what I was using for my logo, which is actually the old one behind us, but there's a new one we're putting into play, and my name, because my stage name Haelphon is the biggest sort of part of this. That's what I publish music under. That's what I operate as in terms of a licensor and a producer, as like a publisher. So it was important to get those protections, especially when I go to create more music, and as the career grows and there's getting more attention from audiences, it's important to have that covered. So we were looking into the trademarking. We're also looking into copywriting on logos, but we found out through the law clinic that there are trademarks that can be had. I initially thought that it was just one trademark that covered everything, whereas if I go and trademark the logo, I have the logo taken care of. And if I trademark the name, I have the name taken care of. But there's actually more to it. You have to go down to specific classes. So we started off with a trademark search. We looked to see if the name Haelphon or the logos related to it were being used in any other industry or in the music industry. I was looking at specifically entertainment and clothing because we were looking at branding too in terms of merchandise. You need different classes for each one. So entertainment and music falls under one, and then fashion and merchandise falls under another. Even if you're using it for business purposes, and your entertainment music logo is that specific thing, or your name is that specific thing, you need a separate filing and a separate class to protect yourself on all fronts. Going down the list, Class 41, which covers entertainment services. Class 9 covers musical recordings, and Class 25 covers clothing. So I need all three of these. Entertainment services is live performances. That's a key piece. Class 9 covers musical recordings, so those are things like an album cover, digital sales, stuff like that, CDs. That's a separate one. There's Class 25, which is clothing. And the interesting thing about clothing is you can file an intent to use, but you have to have specific marks in things like the tags, or like the Polo Ralph Lauren, the little polo player. That's how you trademark it on clothing. So even if I just slap it on, a Haelphon t-shirt, it's not enough. Not a major concern of ours right now. What we're looking at doing is ultimately doing the intent to use. I'm covered for the most part for things like musical recordings because I have my iTunes page, I have my Spotify page. It's been in use for a while, so we would just be filing for the fact that it's already been in use. And there are basic protections that come with that anyway in the first place. If someone were to go claim the name Haelphon, I'm able to fight it because I've been using it for as long as I have. I was the original originator of the name. There was nothing close to it in the first place in the trademark searches, which is great, but we're working towards getting everything else covered, and we need things called specimens. That's specifically more for the entertainment services, so we're talking things like the band flyers, or if I had a drum, it would be on like the bass drum or in the background. You need individual ones for the names and the logos too, so like the flag behind me, those would hypothetically need to be separate on different parts of the stage. So the logo is separate and the name itself is separate. In terms of combinations, it's always best to leave the logo by itself and leave it black. If you do like a color or something like that, it makes it more difficult to file it. And the name Haelphon itself, that gets stayed separately. And eventually we'll be working to file that. This summer, the main concerns are getting the specimens for the Class 41, which is the musical recordings, and then the other classes in terms of the music recordings and the clothing. The clothing right now is the least of the concern. Our big issue is making sure that we have the name and everything taken care of. And the musical recording stuff is fine, so I may file those in advance, but I've been recommended to stick with the law clinic going forward. So when the fall semester resumes, I'm working with them. Next up is filing for the company. I've been technically a sole proprietor for as many years as I've been conducting business under the name. I've been operating without a registered business. I file my taxes as an individual, and it just goes down under independent contractor forms. So for me, it's important because I have only a certain number of deductions I can make as an individual, whereas if I'm registered as a business, a lot more things are related to my business activities. If I'm traveling for Haelphon or the things that I have going on in terms of my apartment, I can deduct certain parts of my rent for home studios. It's also important, keep in mind, to have this sort of liability protection. We're looking at filing an LLC that's registered with Delaware and operating out of California. There are very specific laws that we had to look into. For example, there was concern from Professor Haelphon that there were going to be bypass sort of rights on single-member LLCs. Turns out there is things like pass-through income where you're single taxed, but generally the protections do exist if you are a single-member LLC, which is equally great because we like to have the limited liability. But it's also important as the company to own, things like the trademarks and the licensing agreements, because it sort of shields everything and makes it way easier to transfer and issue sort of pieces of the puzzle too. So when it comes to things like the manager, things like that, they're contracted with the company, not me as an individual. There's a clear distinction between Haelphon LLC and me as Haelphon or me as Zach Champa, which is a big piece too, because going from being a sole proprietor that just, signs contracts personally, being able to transfer everything else and kind of keep it under one central arm is better because it protects me. And I'm also able to take advantages of things like, tax benefits. And I'm able to expense out more, which is related to the business, and ultimately give myself a better sort of leg in the long run. Next up, I was talking to the law clinic about a managerial contract. As I said, I'm bringing a friend of mine who's an outside manager in. We have to draft one on our own, and so we looked at what sort of industry standards were for agents / managers. Again, we're looking out of California because we're primarily going to be operating in California. But one of the interesting things is there's a clear distinction between what an agent is and what a manager is. A manager can sort of do the day-to-day for the artist, so they're looking at handling more of the business operations, but they can't specifically facilitate employment or procure employment for their artists. That is what an agent does, and an agent has to do that. So that includes things like show performances, but weirdly enough, it doesn't include things like getting record contracts or signing licensing agreements. You can give the manager power of attorney to sign things on your behalf, but they can't go out and facilitate booking shows, getting more live performances, and that's a very important distinction to be made. A licensed talent agent who's also a manager can do both, but we decided that it was best to stick with keeping them separate and using an outside talent agent to procure us, things like shows to get everything sort of rolling. But other than that, what the manager does, they primarily handle things like publicity. They're the artist's confidant. They're there to provide guiding advice, things like that. But the contract is going to have to be drafted by an entertainment lawyer, or again until the fall when the law clinics resume. We're also looking at doing stuff with UC Berkeley when we get out there, because they're a little bit more directly affiliated with sort of the entertainment industry that's going on in California, which is also important because it's right there. But the biggest factor was the fact that the agent versus the manager distinction. There are heavy violations that come with a manager procuring employment, so having them separate is also good because it allows us to bring in someone from the outside too to sort of see how our act is as a non-direct affiliate and sort of help us grow things from there. One of the original major deliverables for this project was actually the completion of my album, which is something I've been saying was going to be finished for, I want to say, 8 months or so now. I originally planned it to be done for September, and then January, February, March. We're now in May. The album itself is almost entirely written. It's very close. It's like 96% done. I'm just tweaking the intro song a little bit. I've been in professional voice lessons to get ready to make my recording more efficient. But between having the rest of my university finals and just everything going on with class-wise senior year, we decided to kind of push that off to the side, focus on something which is a little bit more important, which was the marketing plan for the album itself specifically. As of now, there are a bunch of activities which we're going to be doing to promote the album. Primarily, we're going to be doing things like the listening party by holding one at my apartment or a different venue. We're still trying to figure out what the general sort of base for that is going to be, just because we don't know who's going to be here over the summer and how we're going to facilitate the show, whether we're going to have outside people come in, whether we're looking to have more outside people or whether we're looking to it to be more of a small affair. But we'll be starting off with the listening party. I've had them before for singles I've released, and they had really good turnouts. Ultimately, what I'd like to do is have one, at my own home and then do one at a venue where I'm performing it live. I think that would be a cool kind of way to distinguish the release of the album, the fact that it is finally coming out. I literally saw people today who were like, oh, where's the album? Why isn't it done yet? There are also a lot of great resources for me personally. About 85% of my listeners are on Spotify. Spotify has a new feature which allows submission to the editors. Their platform is primarily how artists are getting discovered these days, due to the fact that this is very, very user-based. And the interfaces are great for consumers across the board, whereas, platforms like Deezer and Tidal are not as popular, and then platforms like Apple Music are very, very much commercial. Spotify caters a little bit more to the independent artist, and they have a new feature which allows us to submit songs to their editors, which allows them to listen to the pre-release before it comes out, and ultimately decide if they want to put it on one of the big playlists, which is how artists are going viral. The album is 15 songs, so we have a really good chance of getting stuff in there. You can only select one song off the album to submit, but they do listen to the entire release, so hopefully something will land on there. Confident that it will. We'll see what happens. But we also have other ways to go in the event that it doesn't get picked up by Spotify, by their editors specifically. We're also looking at doing paid promotion with private playlisters. I've released a song in January, I think January 26th, called Mixed Emotions. We threw some money behind it for promotion and ended up getting 26,000, I want to say, naturally grown, organic plays. Had a pretty great retention rate too. We had a 4 or 5% save rate, which is pretty big. That means that listeners were specifically going through and saving the song to their playlists. Looking to back a couple songs in the album, one is primarily Make Up Your Mind, which is sort of like the crown jewel of the album, and then we're going to see which other one is most popular to determine, just from like general listeners and general feedback, to put promo behind that too. So it should be on 2 pretty big playlists with like 35 or 40,000 listeners. These are much more commercial, so we're looking at a higher retention rate, hopefully, than the first song, but the first song was more or less a test, so to be determined. We're looking forward to it. The gentleman who's been helping us with the promotion did agree to letting us keep these songs on for a little bit more, assuming we do bigger packages for each of them. So if we get 2 packages, one for each song, he's going to keep it on for a little bit more, just a little bit of extra headway. And it's not too expensive. It comes in under $1,000, so it's worth it. As I said, they are genuine listeners too. They're not bots. So people are saving them, people are putting them on their playlists, and that's a really important thing for natural growth. We also looked into doing paid promo with Spotify in terms of ads. So we're going to be running a couple audio-based ads, possibly some visual ones too. This is the only social media we're going to be really plugging the promotional ads on. We might be looking at Instagram just for visuals, but I've done them before. They haven't been really effective. Spotify's ads are a little bit different because if users are still not on Spotify Premium, audio ads will interrupt the music, and we're looking at using that as a way to sort of, have me come in and basically, I actually have a script. I'm going to read the script out. But something along the lines of we're looking at targeting 3 cities, Boston, LA, and New York. LA because it's the most likely city in the States to pick up what I'm trying to do. New York because New York's hot for musicians, and Boston because it's where I'm from. But so the gist of it is, hey Boston, this is Haelphon. Thanks for letting me interrupt your music. My debut album, Haelphonics, just dropped, and I wouldn't interrupt your music if I didn't think you'd like it. So click here to take a listen. Now back to your music. The script is very specific. Instead of starting with a negative note, using words like, oh, I'm sorry for interrupting, and saying, thanks for letting me, cut us off. Here's my album. I think you'll like it. We're looking at targeting artists with a similar fan base, or fan bases with similar sort of artist sounds. So artists like Kygo, Calvin Harris, sort of in my range, Avicii, sort of in my range. We're considering whether or not we want to do that. We may play around with both. So just a quick ad and then have the music extend off of that. Ultimately, this should get us some pretty good growth. The numbers were, I believe, around 120,000 estimated reach for the money we were looking to put in. That was a couple thousand. We'd be doing it in all three cities. So for Boston, LA, and New York, the bulk of it being in LA because LA seems to sort of cling on to the stuff I listen to the most. But to be determined. We'll be recording it and running the ad after the album comes out, and that will probably take place about a week after the album is released, along with the rest of promo, because we want to keep it going and we don't want to just have a drop in listener counts after 30 days. We're going to see what the organic growth looks like for the album by itself. Hopefully we get on the Spotify playlist upon its release, so that'll help things. But the goal is to keep it sort of on the forefront for at least a month or two, so it's not just peeling off after 30 days of its release. For the next piece of the marketing plan, we're looking at album commentary. I was inspired by Mac Miller. There have been a lot of other artists who have done this, but I was primarily inspired by Mac Miller. I saw that he did this. He released a whole commentary album about the album that he released. Artists have been known to do this. This is not a new thing, but I thought it was really interesting because one of the core reasons why I write music is emphasis on the lyrics. And my description on Spotify is literally an artist who writes with takes small vignettes from his life and uses a literal writing sense with kind of like an extra bit of exaggeration to really tell these stories. And the album has a range of different themes. We're looking at, stuff about relationships and love to, drug issues that I faced, not me personally, but drug problems from my town, things like mental health, a lot of different aspects politically, emotionally, just as a society. And it goes pretty in depth. I'm a strong writer. I think that's a good characteristic of my music, and you sometimes can't get that across because people won't necessarily look that into how the lyrics are written. So it's important to have the commentary, whether I do it myself in terms of like a video like this where I'm breaking them all down like a Genius style video, or we'll be using Genius's website too, which is important just so everything's fully annotated, so all the comments that I've written down on the lyrics as I've written them, they can all be there for users to sort of interact with and really understand what the basis of it is. I'm going to be doing a lot with my personal Instagram. It's a private Instagram where I have followers of mine from, friends from college, friends from high school, people that have kind of been keeping an eye on what I've been doing. I'm going to break those down too with, a quick story or two after the album comes out. It's going to be, 15 days. It's going to be one song per day, and the breakdown of what the songs are about with little blurbs. After I release the album, it's usually we get some good listeners in the first day, but I want to pick off people that may have missed it. So that's by using, song ideas they may not have thought were going to be on the album. Hopefully they'll see something that catches their eye and then use it subsequently and start taking a listen. So we're looking at really making sure that everything's covered and that people can't necessarily miss the fact that the album was released. Moving on from there, it goes down to licensing distribution, how I plan on getting this further. I've worked with a bunch of licensing agencies. I really recommend it for any artist, any person looking to make music, any person who makes music at a semi-pro to professional level. Licensing is a great way, actually one of the only ways artists are making money on their tunes these days, and that is usually on a non-exclusive basis of getting it in terms of some sort of promotional material. But having a 15-song album is really helpful, especially with vocals and a much more commercial sound, because that means a better chance for me to get it to my licensing agents, and that means there's a chance of more stuff getting placed. The album has a lot of great stuff on it, and it also has a pretty big marketable appeal. It's still a sound of mine. It's not ripped off from somebody else's sort of style. And I think that, assuming it gets to the agents, a lot of songs, I'm sure there will be songs that are more popular than others. I think Make Up Your Mind, again, the crown jewel of the album, I think that's going to see some good sort of licensing buzz, but that also enables us to get people Shazamming the song. My publishers get my songs on Shazam, so if there's anything on a commercial or a promo video, usually whoever's watching it can Shazam the song, which is also important for growth because it takes them directly to Spotify or Apple Music, whatever the platform is. And of course, you get licensing fees up front, and you also get back-end royalties. And so creating residual income off of the music too is important because that really helps with the sort of return on investment for the music itself. And the more streams that we can get, the stream payout rate is 0.004 cents. So the more streams we can obviously get is the more money sort of on the back end, so that's important. Additionally, last year, my friend Dave Apostolides shot a music video for my song Out of My Mind. We're looking at doing more music videos, especially because It's important to sort of leverage everybody and sort of get media on all fronts. YouTube is a little bit different of a platform than it used to be, but it's still important to have things like music videos up for fan interaction, especially because it kind of paints a bigger picture what the song itself is about. So ultimately the goal is to do a couple music videos for the most popular songs off of the album, and then put those up on YouTube, promote them again using paid promo. Those we're looking at doing more of the Facebook and Instagram promotion, as well as the YouTube paid promotion and Reddit paid promotion, just to get the attention of people who may not have seen it. And of course, if, all assuming everything goes well and these songs do perform well in terms of audiences, having extra media for them to sort of relate to the song is important. So that's the general marketing plan of the album. That's a sort of basis. All in all, it's been a really interesting process to sort of learn what this is like. Again, I don't know a lot about the legal aspects of it. I just make music and sort of know my general rights as a musician. But it's been really cool to see how artists are able to sort of safeguard their work and how to grow sort of a brand. While we haven't started the filings themselves specifically, there's been a lot of stuff taken care of just in terms of general information, in terms of what it looks like for trademarks, what it looks like for filing, the steps I need to take in order to sort of safeguard everything that I'm doing. And I think I'm in a much better position too. This was stuff that I had no idea about. There are things that I learned about specifically. Just for example, like the agency versus manager thing, that's a huge factor. And, the success of an artist and the possible legal implications of an artist's career. Those are important things to know about that I probably wouldn't have been able to have found out on my own unless I was really, really digging for them. The same thing with the different classes for the trademarks, the same thing for the LLC filings. A lot of stuff has been accomplished. The next stage is going to be interesting with the album coming out in, probably June. I say that now. Hopefully it'll be out by then. It'll be interesting to see how the marketing plan works out. I'm confident that it's going to get some solid traction and a great retention rate, but it's important to use these original bounds too and see how we can, perfect it. Fortunately, I have a lot of analytics, stuff like that I already can access that will allow me to target people and sort of spend less time in that. But in general, I think I'm confident for how this is looking. There's a long way to go, especially before I go off to California. But as a whole, it's been a great year. Senior year has been, a big year for me, getting my first national TV placements, a lot of big international brands. And now it's time to focus a little bit more on the artist side of things and just keep on growing this as much as I can. So thank you for listening to this. Thank you to Jenny Dinger for putting up with me and allowing me to do this independent study in the first place. And I hope this was informative, especially for anybody who's looking to grow their artist career a little bit more. So thank you so much.